Hello, it's Writer Wednesday, and I have my Camp Nano Rimo mug from last year. I'm ready to talk about self-doubt. A lot of people have referred to self-doubt as the voice of doom and gloom. People have talked about self-doubt a lot, especially when it comes to a first draft. I think sometimes we self-consciously worry. I've made a list of different things. So I'm going to go through the list and we're going to talk about a little bit of it. And I'm going to talk about how to make self-doubt your friend instead of your foe. One of the things about self-doubt, I learned that doubt comes from fear. Usually it comes right at the very beginning. It comes in the middle. There are 8 stages of a first draft according to Natasha Lester. I pinned that on Pinterest. It is number 1, finding a voice. Number 2, groping in the dark. Number 3, the surprise. Number 4, the fireworks. Number 5, the doubt. Number 6 is a glimpse of the end. Number 7 is typing the end. And then number 5 would be now I have to redraft. Self-doubt comes in again. So when self-doubt rears its ugly head, it's usually because of fear, like I said. You get a sense of defeat. You dread things. You dread the plot. Is it boring? Are the characters boring? Are the characters flat? You have a sense of suffocating or drowning in your words or your lack of words. Your heart races. No matter what you do, you just either what you're writing seems to suck, or you think, well, I don't have enough time to write, or you think maybe I'm not talented enough or smart enough to write a novel. You don't know where to start, or maybe you've started and you don't know where to continue, even if you have an outline. Sometimes during your story, you will find yourself bored. I think that's sort of par for the course, especially when you're a creative person. When we're writing or drawing or painting or any of those creative pursuits, we sometimes question our talent, our reason for doing what we're doing. Number 1, I think a really big tip is don't compare yourself to others, especially somebody who's already written their novel. It's already been edited. It's already been published. Your first draft is not remotely comparable to somebody's finished draft. It's just not. People who have published their books most likely have edited themselves. They have had beta readers and critique partners go through their work. Sometimes, and a lot of times, people have had professional editors go through their work. Number 2, I'd say to be mindful. You're going to have negative thoughts. You're going to question yourselves. Those negative thoughts are going to bring even more negative thoughts. But if you're mindful about the negative thoughts themselves and you say, hey, okay, I have these doubts. What can I do about the doubts? What are some of my little tiny successes? What are some of the things I've already done? What have I already worked on? What have I already accomplished? Remind yourself of those things. And then when you get to that point where you are feeling like maybe your characters are flat, take a second look at your characters. Take a look at how your characters are if you were a reader instead of the writer. But the biggest thing I think is that if we start writing or we continue to write based on what others are going to like or what others are doing, we are taking some of the fun out of our own writing. If we start writing for ourselves, if we are writing for what makes us happy, what do you want to read? You know, what book hasn't been written that you want to read? And you think of your book like that. It makes it a little bit better, I think, because it makes it more fun. It's your book. It's yours. It is unique. Only you can write your book. Nobody else can write your book for you. Only you can write your book. That's a question of a ghostwriter. But if you celebrate those small things, like maybe your main character is not flat at all. So what did you do really well about your main character? What have you done to create your main character that has made that main character stand out? What have you done to make that antagonist a really great antagonist and to stand out? Because you want people to feel empathy and sympathy for your characters. You want them to feel like they're real. So what have you done with the characters that you don't feel are flat? What have you done with those characters? And do the same thing for the other characters. If you feel like your story is a bit flat, go and take a look at what you have for your story, the ideas and the theme and your plot structure, and look at your rising action. How much conflict do you have? Why is it boring? Is it boring because you just love your characters and you can't kill off anybody? Is it boring because you love that main character so much that you're not making them more realistic enough? You're not giving them, maybe you're not giving your main character enough flaws, because we are all flawed. And your main character needs to go through a transition, needs to go through a change. Your main character needs to evolve. Sometimes characters start out angry, or they start out wishy-washy. They start out weak, and they evolve into the weak character will evolve into a stronger character, until a badass. The wishy-washy character who can't make a decision on their own evolves into a strong, stand up for themselves character and makes decisions all on their own. That's the character arc. So what have you done for your characters, to create a character that is a realistic character? My other bit of advice, if you think about, every single writer, well, not every single, a lot of my favorite writers, Stephen King has talked about self-doubt. Believe it or not, Stephen King says that a lot of his self-doubt comes up in dreams. If big authors like Stephen King can have doubt, or Neil Gaiman, I've talked about Neil Gaiman and his self-doubt, talked about that with the procrastination and stuff, then, we're not alone in this. We're not alone in this. That feeling of self-doubt, that inner voice that comes, booming at us with the doom and gloom, that voice isn't really going to ever completely go away. According to Natasha Lester, she says, it will always be there telling you to stop writing, that your work is laughable, even after publishing 2 books, and therefore knowing I can write that is of a publishable standard, I still hear the inner voice of despair. She says that you have to get over it. And a lot of other writers, like Stephen King and many others, Bukowski, I like what Bukowski says, and I'll go over that in a minute. You have to get over that hump. You have to keep on writing, regardless of whether you feel the self-doubt. Natasha says that instead that you can make it the most powerful motivator. It's the voice you have to beat. It's what will make you try harder, write better, keep going, make your book perfect. Don't be the writer who lets the voice stop them from writing. Now, Bukowski said, you are better off doing nothing than doing something badly. But the problem is that bad writers tend to have the self-confidence, while the good ones tend to have self-doubt. So the bad writers tend to go on and on writing crap and giving as many readings as possible to sparse audiences. These sparse audiences consist mostly of other bad writers waiting their turn to go on, to get up there and to let it out in the next hour, the next week, the next month, the next sometime. The feeling at these readings is murderous, airless, anti-life. When failures gather together in an attempt at self-congratulation, it only leads to a deeper and more abiding failure. The crowd is the gathering place of the weakest. True creation is a solitary act. Now, that seems a little bit depressing, but if you think about it, if you let your self-doubt quit, then, you've given up. You're not living your dream. You're not going to continue your dream. You're not going to continue fighting. And fear produces fight or flight. So instead of fighting, you're fleeing when self-doubt, when that fear hits. So I say you fight. Okay, so Margaret Atwood says, perhaps I have written about the subjects in this book not only because they were things about which I was anxious at the outset of my own writing life, but because many people, judging from the questions they ask, continue to be anxious about them today. Perhaps I have reached the age at which those who have been through the wash and spin cycle a few times become seized by the notion that their own experience and the suds may be relevant to others. Perhaps I wish to say, look behind you, you're not alone. Don't permit yourself to be ambushed. Watch out for snakes. Watch out for the zeitgeist. It is not always your friend. Keats was not killed by a bad review. Get back on the horse that threw you. Advice for the innocent pilgrim, worthy enough, no doubt, but no doubt useless. Dangers multiply by the hour. You never step into the same river twice. The vast empty spaces of a blank page appall, and everyone walks into the maze blindfolded. So Stephen King, my very favorite, he says that writing fiction, especially a long work of fiction, can be difficult, lonely, that it's like crossing the Atlantic in a bathtub, that there is plenty of opportunity for self-doubt. He also says that he copes with, or at least perseveres through the doubt, because writing makes him happy and it makes other people happy. And this is what he says on writing about the creative muse. There is a muse, but he's not going to come fluttering down into your writing room and scatter creative fairy dust all over your typewriter or computer. He lives in the ground. He's a basement kind of guy. You have to descend to his level, and once you get down there, you have to furnish an apartment for him to live in. You have to do all the grunt labor. In other words, while the muse sits and smokes cigars and admires his bowling trophies and pretends to ignore you, do you think it's fair? I think it's fair. He may not be much to look at, that muse guy, and he may not be much of a conversationalist, but he's got inspiration. He's right that you should do all the work and burn all the midnight oil, because the guy with the cigar and the little wings has got a bag of magic. There's stuff in there that can change your life. Believe me, I know. W. Somerset Maugham, I'm not sure, I can't pronounce his name, said, "We do not write because we want to. We write because we have to." The idea of giving up, the idea of quitting because of self-doubt doesn't sit well with me. I have stopped writing for long periods of time because of self-doubt. I have stopped writing for long periods of time because of other people's criticism. I have compared myself to others. I have allowed other people to compare my work to others or to theirs or to break me. And you know, when it all comes down to what it really all comes down to is fight or flight, because self-doubt is based on fear. And we fear success. We fear failure. We fear that our novel won't be good enough. We fear that our talent, our intelligence isn't good enough. We fear that we'll never be publishable, or if we are publishable and we do get published, that we'll be laughed at, talked about, criticized. And you know, maybe some days my writing does suck. There are some days when I don't have time to write because I haven't made time to write. Maybe there are some days when my talent seems up in the air. I can't find it. It's disappeared. The muse is smoking the cigar and he's locked the door and he said, "Ha ha, figure it out for yourself." Some days I don't know where to start. Some days I am a bit bored with my novel. When those things happen, it's time for me to react, to act, to think about, why am I bored with my novel? Why do I not know where to start? Why haven't I made time for my writing? Why is my writing sucking? Why does my writing suck? Maybe I'm stuck in a part of my novel that needs to be completely deleted. Maybe that scene doesn't belong in my novel. Or maybe it belongs somewhere else in my novel. Maybe that character is too friggin' flat and I need to create a character that's not flat. Maybe I've let life and all the other stuff in life and everything else stop me from writing because I've made excuses for it. Because I've made excuses, period. If I'm not making time for my writing, nobody else is going to make time for my writing. Nobody's going to write the book for me. So I want to write the end. I want to be typing the end. I want to be at stage 7 and I want to be typing the end. So that when I get to stage 8 and I have to redraft, I can start this shit all over again. That's the joy of it. It's a process. It's a process. So if you're having trouble, I say take that self-doubt and throw it right back at yourself. Find out why you really feel that fear. Is there something underneath the surface that's causing that fear? Is there a reason why you think your writing sucks? Maybe that last scene or that last chapter, maybe that doesn't belong in your novel. If you're not making time for your writing, are you making excuses? Because we write and we keep on writing. And you sit your ass in the chair and you write. And whether you take 5 minutes or 2 hours, you write. And there are some of us who have really busy schedules and we have families and we have little ones or we have bigger ones or, you know, and we can't write all day. Writing is not our full-time job. So you have to fit in the writing where you can. But if you don't make that writing a priority and you make excuses for why you're not writing, self-doubt's going to kick in because you're really making excuses for not writing and you're not actually writing. And self-doubt is going to be in the back of your head. Self-doubt's going to be there anyway. But the more that you make excuses for things and the more that you don't sit your butt in the chair and you don't write and you don't continue through the process, you don't fight instead of flight, I think that's that self-doubt. That self-doubt's going to continue. It's a vicious cycle. So I hope this has helped. I hope this has helped. I am trying my hardest to practice what I preach. I am making some time for my writing when I can, on the computer when I can't with a notebook and a pen, whether I write down a paragraph or I write down 2 chapters. I'm trying to practice what I preach. So some of these videos, especially these writer advice videos, I'm making more for myself. I'm making more for myself than for you. I've done research on information about the topic, and hey, I'm guilty. I'm as guilty as the next person. So I'm going to get this up and get my blog post done, and I hope y'all will have a great one. And I need some words. I've got some words to write. So I'll see you again soon. Bye.